Okay, so I'm going to be discussing why IoT is important. And basically, it is important because it can be used in a variety of different ways. Systems are being developed for powering and transmitting data, which creates many different sources of IoT devices. And one unique example that I actually found of this is the underwater setting, right? So I read an article written by Jack Logren about the King Abdullah University of Science and Technology and how they developed a system for powering and transmitting data to underwater IoT devices. And basically, these devices would help scientists more easily monitor remote underwater areas without worrying about losing power, and basically transferring data through optical-based communication and RF-based communication. Another example of IoT would be collaboration with people from, for example, a different geographical location. For example, Zoom classes. That's been a big experiment this year, and for the most part, it's worked great. Obviously, there have been a couple of hiccups, but it's not ideal, but it works, right? There's also many other applications like Trello, which is obviously used for coding and projects, and we also have Microsoft Teams, which is usually worked and used in a workplace environment. I personally use this at work to communicate with my colleagues. Um, and another example of how IoT can be used is supply chain and asset management. Being able to keep track of devices, equipment, in a large organization, keeping track of laptops, textbooks, things like that. Because many times, large organizations are going to have thousands and even depending on the size of the company, even millions and billions of things to track, right? So, for example, I work at Administrative Technologies at ISU, and we have about 5,000 devices out there. And basically, we use a ticketing software called Sharewell, where we document the location, if it's in stock or if it's in use or in repair, stuff like that. So we basically know where the device is at. So I'm going to be talking a little bit more about why IoT is important in this slide. Basically, a big reason is the large economic factor and the investment that goes into the Internet of Things, right? The amount of spending in 2020 has increased 8.2% despite the COVID-19 pandemic, with a worldwide spending of $742 billion, according to the IDC. Um, it was expected to go to about 14%, but didn't quite get there because of the COVID pandemic, and it's expected that it will skyrocket after the whole disease is over. And it's also expected by the year of 2025, the Internet of Things will have a total economic impact of up to $11 trillion. And it's also expected that machine-to-machine communication will increase the United States GDP by $2.3 trillion in the next 30 years. And this estimate, however, it's probably going to underpredict the economic growth to IoT since it's based on data up to 2015, and this can definitely change. It also doesn't consider the indirect impact that IoT has on productivity, which probably has an even bigger uh, impact, but this is pretty hard and difficult to measure, so we won't really know. And for more information behind the economics of IoT, best website that I found was idc.com. So the next thing I wanted to talk about is government and IoT. Basically, there are a couple things that go into this, but one of the biggest debates right now is should the government regulate the security of Internet of Things devices? People that support government regulation in IoT believe that standards applied to every device would help protect the security of consumers. But there's also an opposing perspective which believes that the standards applied would stifle innovation and competition due to increased expenses and difficulty keeping up for small businesses. So basically, just recently on November 30th, which was a few days ago, uh, legislation passed Congress directing the National Institute of Standards and Technology, also known as NIST, to create standards and guidelines for securing IoT devices used by federal agencies. Um, and this basically means that the legislation will likely impact most, if not all, organizations that are involved in the Internet of Things, either directly or indirectly. Directly because they're tied to the federal government, or indirectly because these organizations may start to use NIST standards as a baseline for security in its devices. And in my opinion, this is probably the best outcome. It's sort of a compromise between the two perspectives. So that's it. Another consideration that the government should think about is the growth of IoT, and how this will affect our lives and jobs. According to a consulting company named Zinnov, 120,000 jobs would be affected in India by 2021, while only 25,000 jobs would be created. So, how does this basically translate to the United States, right? India is not a developed country; it's still a developing country. So if we think about it, even if 60,000 jobs in retail and office work were replaced by 60,000 jobs in IoT, how many people can we really retrain to become IT workers, right? These are like things that the government will have to take into account and sort of think about as these companies and technologies start to emerge, and basically how this will affect our lives. So the last part that I wanted to touch on is how IoT will change our lives. And basically, for the most part, the Internet of Things is expected to change our lives for the better, right? So one of the ways is that it can help give us cleaner air and water. It can improve public health, especially in cities like Delhi or Beijing, where there are a lot of people dying from air pollution, with a grand total of 9 million deaths in 2015 alone globally. And basically, in California, an environmental company called Aclima partnered with Google and EDF and researchers from the University of Texas to create a highly detailed block-by-block map of air pollution using a fleet of Google Street View vehicles carrying specialized sensors. And these network of sensors could basically help policymakers identify and reduce pockets of pollution. Another thing that we can expect is smarter cities. So more than half the world's population now lives in cities, and for example, in Barcelona, there's a citywide Wi-Fi that basically connects sensors, software, and data analytics platforms. This has helped the city provide smart water technology, automated street lighting, remote control irrigation for parks and fountains, waste pickups, digital bus routers, smart parking meters, which has all basically helped and contribute to reduce traffic jams and pollution, as well as cleaner water, light, and better, more efficient energy usage, right? And the last sort of topic I wanted to touch on is agriculture, and the implementation of IoT on farms and how it can reduce consumption of supplies, cut waste, and improve the quality of the yield of their products or crops. And these devices range from monitoring temperature changes and humidity levels as perishable goods to tracking microclimates across a cropland, right? So these all sort of contribute to our daily lives. Obviously, there's going to be a lot more that IoT will help and improve our lives in. And if you would like, there's a lot of stuff you can research out there just on Google. So
What is IoT? IoT stands for Internet of Things. According to ZDNet.com, IoT refers to the connection of upwards of 1 billion devices that are connected to the Internet that collect and share data. Now, that might sound scary when you hear all those devices are constantly hoarding data and sending it away somewhere, Fear not, most of these devices work to our benefit. These devices, whether they be as small as a pill or as large as an airplane, work together to make our lives better in many ways. The IoT world allows us to make something that would otherwise be dumb, like let's say a toaster, and make it into a smart device that is more responsive to what we want in our lives. When you think of IoT, I would bet most people would think of kitchen appliances like the example I just used of the toaster, or maybe a refrigerator that can send you a real-time picture of what's inside the refrigerator so when you're at the grocery store, you don't have to think about what you need. You can just look. But IoT comes in all different types. For example, your light bulbs could be connected to the internet. Your car could also be connected, or even your vacuum cleaner. These normal day-to-day items 20 years ago would have never been interconnected to the same network your computer is on. But now interconnectivity is making waves through the world and making human lives much easier. So what makes IoT so important in our lives? Well, like I stated in the slide before this, it makes our lives much easier to live. But specifically to big businesses, it allows companies to access valuable data at low cost. It helps them analyze large amounts of data. You're able to understand customer behavior more easily. You're able to introduce remote working options, and you're able to reduce operating costs. According to Built.io, IoT is on the way to generating upwards to $344 billion in profit while reducing costs to a sum of $177 billion. That's a lot of money and a good profit. They go on to state that the number of devices connected to the web would be around 28.5 billion devices, these ranging from thermostats to high-tech vehicles. The number of devices that get connected to the internet every second is 127. That's every single second. By 2025, the companies that will have invested in IoT will have invested a total of $15 trillion. All these statistics show why the future of IoT is only going up. To not show attention to IoT would be a mistake. With all the pros of the Internet of Things, what could be the cons? Keyinfo.com has a great list of cons when it comes to IoT, some of which are privacy and security, compatibility and complexity, and a technologically dependent life. When talking about privacy and security, with all the devices connected to the internet, sharing our private data with companies it's almost a given to think that some people may have malicious ideas about what they can do with all that data. Some devices may not have the best security and may be easily susceptible to cyber attacks and hacking. When you have so many devices transmitting personal data throughout the web, it may be hard to pinpoint the exact way your data was breached. On to compatibility and complexity. According to Keyinfo.com, there is no international standard when it comes to IoT. I know I personally have had issues with different types of light bulbs connecting and working together in unison when I need them to. This can cause a hassle in people's lives. I know I can tell you right now that it has created a hassle in my life. Imagine if there weren't standards for vehicles, phones, or even other devices that we take for granted. What if your gas tank opening was different and required a specific type of nozzle to fill up your vehicle? What if your phone required a specific type of charger? Looking at you, Apple. These simple yet crucial standards are what make things great. IoT does not have an international standard just yet. And then moving on to technologically dependent lifestyles. With the advent of IoT, it brings the possible downfall to human interaction and the increase in new vulnerabilities. Some have already experienced this pitfall of IoT. One such example was recently when Amazon Web Services had a system outage, and anyone that owned a vacuum, doorbell, or even Christmas lights that used the AWS system environment weren't able to use those devices because all of them relied on the data sent to and from the cloud hosted by AWS. What if more important things that we use in our day-to-day lives become more reliant on those data providers like Amazon Web Services? What if your vehicle can't start because the internet is down? Now think about other forms of transportation like trains or flights. Suddenly those forms of transportations have become dangerous. To contrast the previous slide, I went ahead and investigated what we can do as an average person going through this day and age in technology and how we could better protect ourselves in the future. Networkworld.com helped a lot when researching this portion. One thing that people can do is update their devices to the latest security updates. One of the main ways attackers can get someone's information via malicious attacks is if someone does not update their software. Cyber attacks and exploits evolve daily. Eventually, all security measures become obsolete and are easily broken into. Just look at Windows 7 or maybe even Windows XP. If you're able to keep your software security measures up to date, you'll increase the chance that you will not fall prey to these criminals. Another way you can improve security is by introducing unique identities. One issue in particular that is that there is going to be so many devices connected to a network, some upwards to 1 million. What's to stop someone from faking an address stating that they're the real address? How will we be able to detect whether a device is real or not? This is where unique identifiers come in. With unique identifiers, the risk of being spoofed drops significantly. In the absence of a unique identity, an organization is at a high risk of being spoofed or hacked from a microcontroller level to the endpoint devices at the network edge to the applications and transport layer. With IoT, it's only going up from here. In the future, IoT will become such a large portion of our lives. As time goes by, technology will advance, and IoT is no stranger to this. Who could have predicted that vacuums, refrigerators, or even toasters would be connected to the internet via a smart home connection? IoTNow.com predicts that doors, windows, gardens, and even more will all soon be connected in a one-way or via connections offering humans the ability to control even more aspects of their life in the palm of their hand. With all these devices being connected to the web, how will the infrastructure hold up? Experts believe that 5G will expand the market for IoT and help increase the speeds at which devices can connect and react. Improvements upon artificial intelligence will also help solve the problems with traffic and gridlock via syncing with streets and cars to one another, making driving to and from work a more enjoyable moment in one's day.
Okay, examples and components of IoT systems. So, anytime a technology is labeled as smart, it tends to be a part of an IoT system because it's connected to the internet in one way or another. So, some examples are smart home systems, connected appliances, like you have your toaster ovens that can connect to the internet or anything, and also autonomous farming equipment. That's obviously also smart because it doesn't need a human operator to run. So, added an example here, Simply Safe. That's one of the popular advertisements I'm seeing nowadays, and that's basically a security system for your home. It automatically alerts to Simply Safe's headquarters if anything is happening in your home. So it is a smart system and an IoT system. And there's also four basic component categories for IoT systems, and these are the sensors and devices. So this is what initially collects your data, and then it has to have connectivity, so it sends what data is collected to some sort of cloud infrastructure. And then you have your data processing, which is where it processes the data after it's in the cloud, and then your user interface, which is what shows the user the data in some fashion. All right, after covering some examples and components, we'll go into how the Internet of Things affects our everyday life. So, IoT systems are becoming more and more prevalent in pretty much any electronic we use in our everyday lives. From our fitness trackers, they have smart skills that connect to an app. I have a picture here of a smart fridge, which I always thought was funny, but yeah, the fridge will connect to the internet. It can even track like food that you put in the fridge and let you know when things are going bad. So IoT systems are, blowing up with the age of technology that we're living in now. I have the quote, "Work smarter, not harder." I think that basically sums up IoT in our everyday lives perfectly. It's exactly what people want out of an IoT system, which is less work for them and more work for putting on the technology, which is still no work for them. But Amazon Alexa and Google Home systems are one of the most known and used IoT systems. Um, They are extremely popular. They can connect to your light switches, power various devices, control the temperature in your house, and the convenience and easy interaction is what attracts people most to these IoT systems for their lives. All right, since we covered how the IoT plays into our personal everyday lives, we'll go into how IoT is now pushing cities to become smarter. So, cities across the nation are beginning to adopt various IoT systems for their infrastructure. Some examples of city level IoT systems can be streetlights with the ability to detect free parking spots. Sometimes they have the ability to provide charging to Teslas or other electric vehicles. A lot of cities have electronic displays showing weather, traffic, other information, fire alerts, anything, which is obviously an IoT system since it's connected in one way or the other. We also have our automated water meters, eliminating the need for a meter reader. That's trying to streamline one of the biggest processes a city constantly has to go through, which is checking on people's utilities. So, one of the biggest cities trying to push to become a smart city would be New York City, actually. New York City has a plethora of different apps and websites available for people to be connected to their city, basically. Some examples are Link NYC, which is a free, super fast, free Wi Fi. Um, it's basically supposed to be the replacement for payphones. So that has worked incredibly for New York City. Some other examples are they have actually implemented the automated water meters themselves. They have accounts where users can just log in and check the status of their water usage rather than having a actual meter reader come out.